The Vikings, the Rams, the Ravens, the Raiders, the Cowboys, the Jags. How do we bet these teams moving forward? Are they buy? Are they sell? Teddy and I are going to do a deep dive into each one of them later on in the show. You're watching Wager Talk Today. I'm Lawrence Presman. My co-host Teddy covers, and we are the best daily sports betting show on the planet. It's time for our first guest, Bryan the Bangs Power. How are you, my friend? What's going on?
Doing great, guys. Great to be here. Missed you last week, but I know we've got a special reason that I'm on Tuesday this week, and very excited to be here to break down a couple games. And should be a good time.
Well, let's start breaking down some games, Bryan. And let's start in the NFL for Sunday. This is one that captured your attention. That would be the Pittsburgh Steelers coming off back-to-back national TV wins, one out here on the West Coast, one back in Pittsburgh. They're traveling to Houston to take on the Texans. Right now, look at the WagerTalk Live odds screen. I'm seeing the Steelers -3. Some places there's extra juice, 3 -15 or 3 -20, but it's 3 just about everywhere. Total sitting at 42 for the Steelers and the Texans. Can we believe what we saw from Houston last week? Is this a spot for Pittsburgh to let down? Or are the Steelers just better than the Texans in the trenches? How do you break this one down, Bryan Power?
Well, let's talk about the Texans last week. If you're a client of mine, then they were a nice 4% winner on Sunday. Got them not +9 early in the week. Didn't even need the points. They go to Jacksonville, beat the Jags outright, obviously. I will concede, guys, that the game was not as lopsided as that final score suggests of 37-17. The Jags, they had more total yards. They had more first downs, although it should be noted, Houston had the edge in yards per play, 6.5 to 5.9. Now, this week, Texans back home, and I think they're capable of pulling the outright upset, Teddy. The line, as you mentioned, has already come down and opened +4.5. I know Mike Tomlin, we've talked about before on the program, he deserves all the credit in the world. No losing seasons in 16 years as an NFL head coach. That's remarkable. But get this. Starting with the 2021 season, okay, last 3 years, or about 3 years, 2 years and 3 games, I guess, to be exact. The Steelers have been outscored by 107 points during that time and have just 3 wins by more than 1 possession. They were lucky. You talk about the last 2 primetime games, Teddy. They were lucky to beat the Browns on Monday night with 2 defensive scores. The offense didn't even get in the red zone in that game. Then I don't know, and none of us know what Raiders head coach Josh McDaniels was thinking on Sunday night. Would the Raiders have won that game? I don't know, but certainly they should have been able to at least go for the tie. I don't know what he was doing kicking the field goal. And here's another thing. Not a real fan of Kenny Pickett as a quarterback. Maybe he's a fine person. I don't know him personally, but prior to Sunday night, he had never thrown 2 touchdown passes in a game. Only twice in NFL history had a starter made 15 starts and not thrown at least 2 touchdown passes. One of them was Rick Meyer. So that's some pretty horrible company right there. And with Pickett as the starter, the Steelers only scored 28 points twice in a game. Road favorites, Teddy, that don't put up a ton of points always seem vulnerable to me. And on the other side, C.J. Stroud, what has he done in his first 3 games? 906 yards passing, a 4.0 touchdown interception ratio. No quarterback in NFL history in his first 3 starts has thrown for 900 yards, 4 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Give me the points in this one. I believe the Texans are a live dog for the 2nd straight week.
So I want to talk about the Houston side of the equation more than the Pittsburgh side of the equation. We've seen Pittsburgh on TV the last couple of weeks. We haven't seen Houston. My biggest concern about when you talk about this matchup is a red zone offense that's settling for field goals again and again and again. Houston ranked number 32 in the NFL in terms of red zone touchdown percentages. And you would expect that with a mediocre offensive line and a rookie quarterback. Houston's coming off a big win in which they didn't have to execute in the red zone that well. Can they execute? That's not going to, the way they marched up and down the field against the Jags, I can't picture that against the Steelers. Can Houston execute in the red zone enough to hang within this number? Because offensively, Stroud's getting some love, but the team's not easy for them to put up points just yet.
Yeah, that's true. And red zone efficiency is one of those things that can really be variable, right? Week to week. It's only been 3 weeks so far for Houston. Yes, I concede the offensive line subpar, and you've got a rookie quarterback, which lends you to believe that they're not going to excel in the red zone. But again, I don't think the Steelers are going to put up a lot of points. I don't think the Texans have to put up a huge number here. I talked about how with Pickett as the starter, the Steelers don't score that much. I think, first of all, I think Texans can win this game outright. Make no mistake about it. But, getting 3, I think red zone efficiency, while it's a concern, it won't be enough to scare me off the side here, Teddy.
Bryan Power joining us, everybody. It is $2 Tuesday over at WagerTalk. Bryan Power is the $2 man. Tell us what play you've got going for our clients.
Yeah, how about that? It's going to be our first 5% NFL play of the season. It's been a great first 3 weeks, 67% overall, 10-5 these first 3 weeks. That includes a 6-1 record with sides. I mentioned earlier, Houston was an outright winner for me on Sunday. Of those 6 sides that won, 5 were underdogs that took the game outright. So we're doing really well with that. This is my favorite side, obviously, of the season to date. And as you mentioned, Prez, only $2 to get on board. Can't get much better than that.
Awesome stuff, Bryan Power, everybody. We got a great show lined up. Brian's going to take apart one more game. Teddy and I are going to do a deep dive into a bunch of NFL teams, whether we should buy or sell. Teddy's got his big game breakdown. And Dave Sharapan will join us at the end of the show. Before we get into Bryan Power's next game, I do want to make mention, speaking of settling for field goals, I lost my 5% play last night, and it was a total wrong play. I didn't get unlucky. I just was wrong. And it slayed me, as it always does. I didn't even text Teddy. Nobody talked me off a ledge. But I won my 5% on Sunday. And we move on. I'm down 20 units on the NFL season already. Not the best, but the same thing happened last year, and I'm looking forward to the challenge of getting it all back, and I will. My apologies. We had a ton of people rely on me last night for that 5% play, and man, I took it worse than you guys. Like, that is the God's honest truth. I can't handle it. Anyway, let's move on. Teddy, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I love it. Lawrence spends 3 minutes talking about how he's minus 20 units in the NFL. Brian's hit 67% this NFL season. I've hit 60%, 77% since week 1 of the preseason. And Lawrence is hijacking the show to talk about how much he sucks.
Lawrence isn't hijacking his own show, and Lawrence just set you and Brian up perfectly. Teddy took the bait, reeled the fish in, and now he's having a nice meal with Bryan Power at a great fish place in the Cosmo. I can't remember the name, celebrating their incredible NFL start. That worked out.
I can't think of the restaurant either. Great restaurant, the Cosmo, the fish place. I'm with you.
One next,
Brian. Let's talk
another
SDK.
Game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, go, Ted.
Let's
set
talk
it up.
Duke and Notre Dame. Looking at the WagerTalk live odds screen, the Fighting Irish coming off a crushing loss. Duke Blue Devils, all they've done is win games and cover point spreads. Notre Dame minus 5.5 on the road. Total 52.5, the prevailing number. What do we do with the Irish and the Devils?
Yeah, guys. Well, first of all, Prez, I'm with you on Monday night. I had the Eagles team total under 24.5, and they scored 25 with the safety, so that was really fun. But on Saturday, I had a 5% win with Notre Dame, plus 3.5. Let's bring it back to the college ranks, guys. I was a little ticked that not everyone could probably cash on that one. Obviously, closed plus 3 at most shops. But maybe we can get our revenge here, as this is a brutal spot for the Fighting Irish. Teddy, certainly I would imagine you'd agree. They're off that last-second loss to Ohio State. Now they head to Durham to face unbeaten Duke. And situationally, this game, very similar to a play I believe Marco gave out on the show yesterday with Syracuse hosting Clemson, because we've got, just like Marco with Syracuse, a unbeaten home dog here with Duke. And we know Notre Dame struggled to put points on the board last week against Ohio State. Well, Mike Elko's defense here at Duke has given up just 35 points in 4 games. Some weaker competition of late for sure. But remember, they beat Clemson 28-7 in the opener. And going back to last year, guys, Duke is now 9-1 straight up, 8-2 against the number their last 10 games. The lone straight up loss during that stretch was by just 2 points. And this defense at Duke, familiar with Notre Dame quarterback Sam Hartman, remember, who used to be at Wake Forest. Wouldn't you know, last year, Duke beat Hartman and Wake Forest 34-31 right here in Durham. Yes, Hartman obviously has a much better supporting cast with Notre Dame than he did at Wake Forest. But let's also talk about the other starting quarterback in this game, Riley Leonard. He's been fantastic. 278 more total yards passing and rushing combined last week. ESPN Game Day will be on campus this week, I do believe. And Duke's on a 12-4 ATS run at home. Hard for me to see them losing this by 6 or more points, guys. Given the spot Notre Dame is in, I say take the points with the Blue Devils.
So we know that the Irish are battle-tested. They played Ohio State. They played NC State. They played some good defenses. Duke, since that week 1 win against Clemson, where it was Clemson shooting themselves in the foot over and over again, since then they played, Lafayette, Northwestern, and UConn. They haven't played anybody. And they're covering point spreads, which means they're getting betting market support, which means that this point spread is less than a touchdown. Can Duke really hang with Notre Dame within less than a touchdown? Is Duke actually that good? Or are we worried at all that Duke's recent run of success, both straight up and against the spread, has left them a little bit overvalued here? Because for me, it's like 7. I can't take the Irish, the Blue Devils at less than 7. At 5.5, it's just too short. It's not for you. Tell me why.
Sure. I mean, again, if it was just this year, then yeah, I would have a concern. But it's going back to last year. I think there's a large enough sample size with this Duke team to believe they are for real. And any reservations I have, Teddy, is sort of counteracted by the fact that the spot is just so horrible for Notre Dame. I mean, coming off a loss like that, I mean, it's going to be tough to get off the mat. And oh, by the way, do we have a sizable coaching edge with Elko over Marcus Freeman? I mean, Notre Dame doesn't even have enough guys on the field for the key play in the game. I think that may be the case. And the familiarity the defense has with Hartman, I'm willing to look past the quote-unquote lack of big game experience Duke has. And, you know, they beat yes, Clemson did shoot themselves in the foot, Teddy. I agree with that. But that was a big game. It was a standalone game on a Monday night to open the season. The spotlight was on Duke. No one expected them to win. I get expectations a little bit higher now, a few weeks later. But I think this team is for real, man. And I would take them plus the points against Notre Dame in what is, I just think, a horrible spot for Freeman and company.
Bryan Power, everybody, exclusive handicapper at WagerTalk.com. And also our $2 Tuesday expert. He's got a 5% play up. It's his favorite play so far this year in NFL. It's only $2 freaking dollars. So please head over to Wager Talk and grab that play. Teddy, you did your chin maneuver.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because it's important to note on the $2 Tuesday, people think there's some kind of something attached to it. There's nothing attached to it. There's no bait and switch. You get on board, you get to play for $2. The idea is bring some new clients in. Maybe some of them will like what they get. Maybe some of them will stick around. But there's no nonsense with it. There's no BS. $2, you get to play, win or lose.
Yeah, and Teddy, I don't know if you've ever taken time to read Bryan Power's analysis. Really spectacular writer. I mean, it balances out his hairstyle. Anyway, Bryan, I was while you were talking, I was scrolling through my phone because I have a 14-year-old stepson.
I saw you laughing, which concerned me, to be honest with you.
Well, actually, that was Joe and I talking in Slack. Joe and I should do a show together.
I can only imagine what those comments were if Joe was involved, but yes.
Yeah. Joe doesn't want to do a show with you.
Nobody wants to do a show with me, Prez. See, I can't speak. Who wants to do a show with me? I'm too dominating. I'm unbelievable, and everybody around me just looks mediocre. I don't bring out the best in people, Teddy. Okay, that's bullshit. Bryan, we've promoted you. Teddy, you'll hold on. Bryan, we've promoted you. We love you. You're incredible. You're kicking ass in the NFL. We're lucky to have you. Thank you for joining us on Wager Talk today.
My
Teddy,
pleasure.
What were you about to say?
Nothing.
Okay. So before we get into what did bettors learn, one of our listeners asked us, do you tease totals? The answer for me is no. I have never teased a total in my life, not in a 10-point or a 6-point teaser. Have you?
In my life, I'm sure I probably have, because who knows what I was doing before.
One time. Yeah.
Yeah, before. But certainly in the modern era, meaning since I've been in Las Vegas for the last 25 years, the answer is never. 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 Not once in a while. Never. Not a positive expectation wager.
But
period.
Why?
Because
and
there's
I'm
more
with you.
variance. Okay, this is why. All right, and I'm going to draw two curves with my finger, which aren't going to look good. But a point spread curve is going to be higher. Okay, because the expected distribution of outcomes is fairly close to the center. The totals, and because it's fairly close to the center, because the curve is higher, the 6 points are worth more. When you look at the distribution outcome of totals, it's a lower curve. So the distribution, in terms, when we talk about where the total is compared to where the results actually land, there are fewer outcomes that will turn a loss into a win based on the curve, based on the math. So because there are more, not more potential outcomes, but where the curve is flatter on the one side and steeper on the other, it makes the 6 points more valuable with sides than it does for totals. It's just that when you look at the two curves, it really stands out, totals versus sides. Does that make sense? You were nodding your head. I tried to explain it without a graphic in front of me.
Yeah, and listen, you were put on the spot. You didn't even know we were going to talk about this topic. It makes sense. I'd like to see the data because, look, I don't tease totals, so I agree with you. But I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, why don't I tease totals? Like, ultimately,
because the curve is flatter.
So are you saying that the bookmakers are closer on the spreads than they are on the totals?
Yes. When you look at the distribution outcome between point spread and game result, the bookmakers are closer with sides than they are with totals over an extended sample size. It's not close. That makes the 6 points more valuable for sides than they are for totals, period. Plain and simple.
Teddy covers. We got a big surprise coming next week. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I'm just saying we got a cool surprise coming for everybody. What did we learn in the wonderful world of sports betting?
What we learned last night, for me, stands out with one concept: strength of schedule in the NFL. I'm going to read a little write-up. And again, I don't want to blow my own horn. I won with Philly last night. It was pretty easy. But here's what I wrote in the write-up. While Philly came into the season lined as a Super Bowl contender, Tampa Bay came into the season lined as a 6.5 win team. This is the only time you'll see them on Sunday night or Monday night all year. A team the league is trying to bury, not highlight. Yes, Tampa is 2-0, but the combined record of the two teams they beat, 0-5 straight up, 0-5 against the spreads. Both wins came in hotly contested games that came down to the wire, and Tampa needed a +5 turnover edge to survive and advance in those contests. Both teams were 2-0, but Tampa had played no one and was lucky to win. There are many other, when the first two games, and obviously when the two teams played on the field last night, it was a mismatch. Philly was the clear right side. Even with their red zone inefficiency, they still won the game by 2 touchdowns. There was no sweat. If you had the Eagles, like my clients and I did. That got me thinking, it's not just Philly. How many other teams really stand out in terms of early season schedule stuff? I'm going to talk about a couple. How bad are the Jets? The Jets are awful. Who have they played the first, Buffalo, Dallas, New England, and Kansas City this week. All 4 games against elite defenses, top 10 defenses. Maybe there's money to be made with the Jets later on. Now they face this gauntlet of brutal defense to open the season. The Jets might be better than we think they are. Are the Ravens that good? There's a lot of, Baltimore's one of the best teams. Well, let's see. They beat Houston. They beat a Cincy team that can't score by a field goal, and they lost to Indy. Ravens haven't played anyone. They haven't shown us anything just yet. Maybe they're a little overvalued in the markets. The Browns, they played 3 good defenses as well. Cincy, Pittsburgh, Tennessee. Is that offense maybe a little bit better? than the numbers might show. The Cowboys. Oh, the Cowboys, one of the best teams in the NFL, right? Who'd they play? Giants, Jets, Arizona. You trust Dallas now when you think about it? The Patriots, Philly, Miami, the Jets, Dallas in week 4. I know the Jets aren't good. Jets have a defense. Miami has an offense. Philly is both. Dallas is both, maybe. Patriots, tough schedule early on. New Orleans, who they played? Tennessee, Carolina, Green Bay. What do we say with those teams? They're all offensive works in progress. Saints defensive numbers are great this season, but they haven't played an offense that works. San Fran, they played Pittsburgh, the Rams, the Giants. They have Arizona this week. And now we think, oh, San Fran's the best. They haven't played anyone yet. It gets much tougher for San Fran. You know, Tennessee, they played the Saints, Chargers, Browns, Bengals coming up. We think they suck now. It gets easier for Tennessee down the road. Strength of schedule. I know I took a minute here to highlight a good handful of teams. It matters a lot when we talk about week 3, week 4 of the NFL season. Who's shown they can beat good teams? Who's been feasting on the weak? Who's been finding ways to win against good defenses? Who's been living the good life against bad defenses? Etc., etc. Pay attention to this stuff. It'll make you money. Lawrence?
Teddy, I love this concept, but I want to ask you, let's look at Miami, Buffalo, Kansas City, Philadelphia, San Fran, call it Dallas. Let's say that these are the best teams in the league, and they are substantially. Then there's a few teams that absolutely stink, Chicago, etc. The majority of the teams, though, and there's more evenness in football these days to me. What's the word? Parity?
Yes.
Yeah. So the strength of schedule concept, it's certainly important, but I don't know if it carries as much weight as it used to. There's just a chunk of middle class right now. I wish the economic and political system was exactly the same way, because a huge middle class is always a good thing. But that's where I look at this league, whether you look at Baltimore or Pittsburgh, there's just Seattle, there's a giant gang of teams that sit in the middle.
So you think, I don't understand, you think this is different from other years? Because, again, I've been making NFL power ratings for 25 years, Lawrence.
I don't think there's as many horrific teams as there were in the past. And I also think they're less.
It's only week 3. The teams haven't been riddled with injuries yet. There will be a bunch of horrific teams by the end of the year. That's how it works.
So you don't feel like there's more parity today than there was 10 years ago. You feel like it's the same.
Definitely not. That's a talking point that you hear, the talking heads. Yeah, there's more parity. If you pay attention team by team, game by game, year by year, it's not anything different in a broad stroke brush than what we're used to seeing.
Well, I will tell you that. I will tell you one thing. We see less massive favorites than we used to, but maybe I'm wrong there as well. Teddy, let's get into our buy and sell segment for the NFL going into week 4. Then we've got your big game breakdown and Dave Sharapan. Guys, if you're enjoying the show, there's 366 of you watching live, only 66 likes. That means 300 of you did not take literally 1 second out of your day to hit that thumbs up button. Yeah, bam, bam. I did it. Teddy, I hit the like button every single day. You? Chance? No way.
Never once.
Never once. Okay, buy and sell. Let's start with the Minnesota Vikings. Here's a team last year that won a whole ton of super close games, and this year it seems like it has reverted. They had a chance against the Chargers. Really, the mess up was on the first down at the end of that game. Cousins had a wide open wheel route in the back right of the end zone and just overthrew the wide receiver for a potential win. They're now 0-3, but they have a game that is winnable this week. What do we do with the Minnesota Vikings this week and moving forward?
So the question is buy or sell. I'm not buying Minnesota. Okay. They went 13-4 last year and were lined as an 8.5 win team coming into this year. The markets knew that Minnesota was a fraud a year ago. They're 0-3 right now. And look, they're dead last in the NFL in turnover margin, which is one of those things that for a team like Minnesota should tend to even out. Look, if you have a team with a rookie QB and they're dead last in turnover margin, I don't necessarily expect that to turn around. For a team with a veteran quarterback, a team that has fumbled 7 times this year and lost all 7, the turnover luck's been bad. We would expect Minnesota to be better in that regard. But do I look at Minnesota as a buy team? Not even maybe, Prez. What about the Rams? What do you think of LA off of last night's showing on Monday Night Football? Is that a buy or a sell squad?
I think they're a buy team for me, Teddy. I was on the over in that game. That was my play. And, they scored 2 touchdowns. The first one, I don't feel like his heel touched the white line. But even if it did, they were able to move the ball. And they've been able to move the ball on San Francisco as well. Matt Stafford looks good. Cooper Kupp is coming back eminently, not this week, but shortly. Their 2 rookie wide receivers are doing well. Their defense is much better than anticipated. Their secondary's got a ton of speed. They are problematic on their run game, and I did not like a lot of the play calling last night. I just to stop really quickly, when it's 3rd and 16, you're not going to get a first down with a run up the gut. Why can't you just hurl the ball down the field and hope for pass interference? I mean, do something. So I have some questions, but given what we expected from the Rams at the beginning of the season, I think they're a buy team moving forward and could be an interesting play on team. You?
Yeah, I mean, the Rams are a team coming into the season. I had them ranked among the weakest. I've got them 4.5 points higher now than I did coming into the campaign.
Ravens.
Well, you heard me talk about Baltimore early on, and what bettors learned. They played Houston, a Cincy team that came with the football in Indy so far. They're 2-1. They've got injuries all over the place.
Yeah.
I'm not sold on Baltimore. And I'm going to talk about it in my big game breakdown momentarily. The Ravens game this week, by far the biggest line mover of the week. Wise guys have taken a stand against Baltimore this week, and I don't necessarily disagree with them.
Teddy, Raiders, Dallas.
What about, let me ask you about the Raiders.
They're a sell team for me. Firstly, Josh McDaniels is clearly a moron. Secondly, Jimmy G, he just can't stretch the field. And that's a huge problem when you're trying to set up a run game, which is what they really are identity-wise. This is a team that reminds me of a bad version of the early Brady Patriots, a team that will run the ball, and when they throw the ball, it's 6-yard outs to the sideline. This is a team that wants to control the clock, and a team that I think will play to the under all year. Without being able to stretch the field, it's going to be really hard for the Raiders. And their defense is weak as well. I think ultimately this team will be in the bottom half of the league, both offensively and defensively. They are a sell team for me. Do you have anything quick to add?
Certainly don't. Not a lot of positive expectations for the Raiders. Not in the betting markets, not in my heart.
Go Dallas and Jacksonville. Do them both at the same time, and we'll get the segment over.
I'm not sold on Dallas. Again, we talked about Dallas and how good they've looked. They played the Giants, the Jets, and the Cardinals, all of whom will be bottom 10 teams right now. Their schedule does get a good notch or two tougher. Dallas has lived on turnover margin. Dan Quinn's defense has been creating turnovers more than any other defense in the league in each of the last 3 seasons, or the last 3 seasons running. But for me, it comes down to Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott is not a Super Bowl winning quarterback. We saw it in the postseason last year. We saw it last week. We've seen it again and again. Dallas is good. Their defense is very good, but they're not great. Lawrence?
And Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville's a buy team moving forward, Teddy. And we saw this last year with a rough start at the beginning. I think you can throw that Houston game out the window. I think we're going to get a lot of value betting Jacksonville moving forward. They got Atlanta this week in London, England, and I think it's a great spot for them. I like Jacksonville this week, -3. I like them moving forward. Teddy, what a great segment. Buy and sell with Teddy and the Prez. Guys in the chat room and people after the show. We had a guest scheduled for this section, and that guest had to cancel yesterday. So instead of putting another guest in, Teddy and I went with the buy and sell segment. My question to you all is, do you want us to continue this buy and sell segment every Tuesday, or should we just bring on a guest? Let us know. Teddy, it's time for your big game breakdown, and then David Sharapan joining us.
It is time for my big game breakdown. Let's go to the NFL on Sunday and talk about the Ravens and the Browns. By far, the biggest line mover off the opener. Wise guys have made a statement here. They like Cleveland in this ballgame. Look at line here at Baltimore as a favorite. They were -2, -2.5. Now, the Browns are -2.5, just about everywhere. 2.5 with juice in a lot of spots. Total sitting at 41. Looking at that WagerTalk live odds screen. And look, there are two key factors in play. One, Cleveland's defense has been phenomenal. And offensively, again, Deshaun Watson's made mistakes. They had 200 on the ground, 200 through the air against Tennessee. They haven't faced a weak defense yet. They're battle tested with an elite D that is, playmakers all over the field on that defense. Baltimore, well, let's see. Justin Tucker's missing field goals, and they've got injuries all over the secondary, and they've got injuries on the offensive line, and they're coming off an overtime loss. Some coaches we like off a loss. Harbaugh's not one of them. That hasn't been his role at all. And I think when you have a team like Cleveland that lost on Monday Night Football, their only national TV showing, and has a player as their star, and Deshaun Watson, who's attracted a lot of negative attention, probably deservedly so, from the mainstream media, that isn't a team with a natural betting bandwagon. All right. The fact that they lost that Monday night game, the fact that Watson is not someone who's liked outside of the football world, these are things, maybe positives in Cleveland direction from a value standpoint. All the sharp money's coming the Browns for good reason. Give me Cleveland. -2.5. You don't want to lay the points, take them on the money line. This is a game I do expect the Browns to find a way to win. There's your big game breakdown. Back to you, Mr. Lawrence.
Teddy, I'm taping the NFL presidential address today, all three segments. I'll be giving out the under in that Browns-Cleveland game. Do you know that Cleveland has held all three teams they've played against to only a field goal when entering the red zone? All year.
Yes, the Browns, the Browns defensive numbers, well, they're off the charts good. Which again, they're not going to remain that good from a yards per play standpoint, from a red zone efficiency standpoint. The Browns defense has been phenomenal, and it may well continue to be that way. That's a good. It's not a defense that's built on smoke and mirrors. There's talent at all three levels.
And last year they really struggled to stop the run. They have fixed that up this year. This is a much better Cleveland team than anticipated, and a team I think that will play to the under a lot. Dave Sharapan, everybody. Dave, anything to add to what you have heard so far?
Well, I had a very comfortable seat. I got to listen to both you discussing whether there's a lot more mediocrity now than years past. There's a lot of mediocrity, and no, it's not different than years past. The NFL is about the middle more than about the top and the bottom. So you both can be right, and I think it's a true statement. It's week 3. We just finished. We don't know who's good, who's not. I like the buy and sell segment. If I'm the guest that gets bumped, I'll be glad to get bumped if that means more of buy and sell for you guys. That's awesome. All right, I'm just saying. I don't want any drama on Flex Tuesday. It's been a hell of a year. Good. It looks great. It looks unbelievable. But it's been a good year so far, and it's only September. So everything's good. Everything's good.
Teddy.
So, Dave, you came on the show and you're wearing baseball gear. And we haven't talked any baseball. I don't think we talked a whole lot of baseball on yesterday's show.
Sure.
Let's take a minute and talk a little MLB right now. Who are the pros betting down the stretch? Who are the Joes betting down the stretch? And what do you see
Right now
in the MLB betting marketplace right now?
It's against Seattle. It's one of those things. Seattle had such a good resurgence right after the All-Star break. Expectations were through the roof. And the last week, really the last maybe month, they've hit the skids. And they're playing a series against the Astros. Yesterday, you got Verlander plus money. Now, I know it's not the Verlander of old, but it's still, you just watch the numbers. They're favored again today. They're going to play the Astros again today. So it's against Seattle. In the National League, up until the weekend series against the Rockies, it was against the Cubs and on the Marlins. Now, we'll determine it, the last spot. This is one of those ones where they're trying to find a team that can upset the Braves in the National League. I don't know if it's the Dodgers. There's a little bit of Phillies talk. There's a little bit of Marlins talk. No one's mentioning the Brewers. And I don't want to say fall forward again with the National League Central team, but that's a team in the NL. And I'm not catering to the Prez. I never do, although I love the guy. Toronto may be the team in the American League. They may be the team that's the buzz in the American League. I love Baltimore, and our man Kevin is so excited about the Orioles' prospects of being the 1 seed and going to the World Series, at least getting to the ALCS. But you know the sharp guys, so the Ramises and the parallelograms, they love the Rays. That's the team that you talk about,
The
guys
Rays.
getting futures. The Rays. Yep. Tampa Bay Rays.
Team's falling
I'm telling you.
Team's a
That's
mess.
why they like them.
Teddy.
Listen, they bet the Raiders last week. They bet the Jets last week. They're not always right. That's who they bet. I'm just telling you what people tell me. They're not always right.
So is there action up and down the card? I mean, are people like the Royals are the hottest team in baseball right now? Do people actually pay attention to that over the last couple of weeks? Or the Red Sox falling apart? Or the Angels falling apart? I mean, do you see the teams that are out of contention getting any action on a day in, day out basis? Or are they just pretty much forgotten about at this stage?
It almost becomes like in the book, it becomes almost like the NFL preseason market where only the sharp guys are playing it. And they're just picking off the dog prices every single day. On the weekend, nobody bets it at all except those guys. Listen, the Pirates have been the best team in baseball since August 1st in the National League. They actually have a winning record. The Royals were plus $2 dogs over the weekend against the Astros all 3 days. And you watch the line come down. Somebody bet it with money. I mean, real money. So, yes, but I said it on my other show, Bostonian versus the Book. Once we get to September, everybody stops betting baseball. You got 5 months of information, 5 months of, trends and numbers and like things like for Ralph to pull up that are somewhat holding true to those numbers. You got the most information and everybody stops betting it because football starts. When you're betting on stuff that's completely new information and you don't know who's good and who's not. So I think September betting in baseball, I've seen it done for years. The best bettors I know are still betting baseball in September. Now, this week may be a throwaway because you have guys playing for contract incentives and other different things. It's a different type of deal the last week, except for the teams that are still in it.
Dave Sharapan joining us, everybody. Dave, let's turn our attention to NFL. I'm going to throw 2 games at you. These are the 2 sexiest games of the week. So the first one is Buffalo-Miami. Now, Buffalo is minus 2.5. There are 3s on the board. It's now 50/50 to the 3. Even the Circa has gone up to 3. So there's clearly some money coming in on Buffalo. And well, then the next game, which is an absolute must-watch game, is Chicago at home.
It's the best game on the board.
Denver. Yeah.
It's the best game on the board.
Looks like there's money coming in on Denver. We got a 3.5 on the board at Caesars. You guys can check this all out at our live odds screen, WagerTalk.com. So those two games, what's your take? What are you hearing, et cetera, et cetera?
I love when we start to get to this point because the narratives start to direct, the action and the content space. So Miami puts up 70 against Denver and, couldn't do anything wrong. Buffalo, nobody was watching, shut out Washington and just dominated them. Turnovers,
4
everything else,
interceptions.
right? Miami's a dog. This is one of the ones you sit in the book and everybody comes to the counter and goes, how is Miami a dog? How can this possibly be? And they don't even take the points. They take them on the money line. Now, as the book, not that you need to get on 3 and then stay there, but once you get on 3 this early in the week, you really can't get off of it. So the book's going to bounce between 2.5 and 3 to try to find where that bad guy money's coming. They're going to be on Buffalo. There's no question in my mind they're going to be on Buffalo. Now, the other game is a game, Denver, who's looked worse than Denver? I mean, nobody in the AFC. The only team that arguably could look worse is Chicago and what everything's gone on there. So Denver loses. They get 70 put up on them, and they're a road favorite. None of it makes any sense. That game's flying over. Not going over. It's flying over. All right? You'll see. You'll watch. I love when two bad teams get together. Everybody bets the under like it's going to be a snooze fest, and it might, but I think it goes over. Sidewise, I can't wait to see where the line goes because how do you come up to the counter or go on an app and push a button on either side there and make a case for it? I mean, that would be the ultimate big game breakdown, Teddy.
Well,
forget the good game. You picked a hell of a game in Baltimore and Cleveland to talk about. That's another really good divisional game. But I think Chicago and Denver is the game of the week.
Well, I can make a case for Denver, and I will in my NFL presidential address, so check that out. And it's not a case for Denver. It's a case for the worst team in the history of professional sports. But I do have a bet for you guys to look into on that Chicago game, and then I'll throw it to you, Teddy. Denver's rush D doesn't exist. Chicago has no pass offense whatsoever. I don't know what the number is yet, but it will be somewhere around 64 yards. Take Justin Fields over rushing. Teddy, all you.
So I have to come back to you. I got to ask Lawrence a question. Which is the worst team in NFL history, supposedly?
I don't even know if you could count Chicago as a team. But Chicago Bears are the worst team I've ever seen ever. And you think they were bad last year? They are minus 59 in point differential in 3 weeks. Minus 59. But don't worry, Chicago fans. You at least still have the worst pizza ever made.
So, not to call you a master of hyperbole, but just this Bears team right now is not worse than the 0-16 Lions team. And I could probably, if I started thinking, I could think of 10 teams. 10 teams that are far worse than this year's Bears. Teams that have had worse start to the season than this year's Bears, et cetera, et cetera. But what happens is everyone forgets history and overreacts to everything, which is what we try not to do on WagerTalk Today. It's not about overreacting. It's about looking at things coolly, impassionately, and taking care of business. Yes, Lawrence.
I bet KC last week. I've been betting against the Bears forever. I don't overhype or underhype anybody.
When you say the Bears after week 3 are the worst team in NFL history, you're overhyping.
See what happens. Let's wait and see what happens. Okay, 3 games. 3 games and a point differential of minus 59. I don't know how it gets worse than that. Justin Fields, they don't even have a quarterback. Literally, they don't have a quarterback on the field. At least Detroit had a quarterback. Anyway, let's get some actionable info out of Dave. I'm going to shut up now. Teddy, we got college football, any other NFL. I'll kick back, relax, learn from you two wise men.
Sure, because a lot of times you're right on stuff, Lawrence. This is not one you're right on. Dave, let's talk about college football this week. We talked some MLB. We talked some NFL.
Yep.
Who are the hot teams in the college marketplace right these days? Are the wise guys betting on the same team every week? Are the public lined up behind the same team every week? Who are the hottest teams in the markets right now?
Last week, the Brinks trucks came into every book they could and bet Oregon on the money line, and they laid the 21 against Colorado. That was one of those ones that the content space was all over it. The small-time players, meaning less units, it doesn't mean your value of your opinion is any less. There's no unit shaming in sports betting. But the smaller players were all on Colorado. They were taking them plus the points. They had a shot on the money line. They never had a shot. The game was done when it started. They play USC this week. This will be one of the biggest movers of the talk of all this stuff. They're 21-point dogs again, and they're playing USC. Now, the interesting thing here is that the total last week was really high, and it went under because Colorado didn't score. USC's really good offensively, not so good defensively. The game may actually get to this high total because you watched Arizona State score points against USC. You watch everybody score points against USC. The rest of the card is really struggling this week. I mean, when we got to talk about games like Clemson, Syracuse, we got to talk about games like Notre Dame and Duke as the high-profile game. Now, I'm not saying that Duke is not a good football team. They beat Clemson, and they're 5.5-point dogs at home. Notre Dame should have won that football game against Ohio State last week. And they're going to get bet again, I think, right now. So that's the game of the week. I mean, there's the South Carolina, Tennessee's a good SEC game. It's 12. Alabama's playing, let me see, down at the bottom, Alabama is playing Mississippi State. It's 14. Georgia's playing Auburn. It's 14.5. There's so many games that are double-digit spreads this week. It's really hard to find like really big marquee games. I think Texas A&M and Arkansas will be another one. We don't know how good Texas A&M is. So I think that'll be one where they'll be on the home dog. Not that it always gets there, but those home dogs in the SEC, pretty good stuff. LSU Ole Miss is the other SEC game. It's probably that one is actually the most competitive. 2.5, 2.5, 2. Look for a reason to take Ole Miss and against LSU with Ole Miss coming off of that loss. Those are the games I have circled. Was there any other games that you saw that you wanted to mention?
Well, I wanted to ask you real quick, and we got just a moment left here with Dave Sharapan at SportsBKConsig, the Sportsbook Consigliere on Twitter. An excellent follow. I encourage you to give him, again, at SportsBKConsig. But when I was talking about bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books, like I do every Monday, it felt like there were a boatload of middles in college football last week. Michigan Rutgers, 24.5, 23.5, 24. Army Syracuse. Oklahoma Cincinnati landed in the middle. Ohio State Notre Dame landed in the middle. Hawaii and New Mexico State landed in the middle. Troy Western Kentucky landed in the middle. And on and on. When you have, a half a dozen games or more that legitimately land in the middle, do the books feel that? There's just one of those deals that we talk about it, but it didn't really happen.
Only on the big games. You really feel it on the big games. The Ohio State Notre Dame game, falling 3, with a lot of books being at 3.5. They got totally sided on that game. I was with the guys downtown on Saturday night. It was not a good mood for a lot of them because that was one of the ones they got beat up on. When multiple games do it, you can feel it a little bit. But what happened on Sunday made up for all of it. They had such a big day on Sunday with the dogs winning outright. Forget about them not covering. The favorites were 8-5, but 5 dogs win outright. Baltimore goes down. Jacksonville goes down. Whatever sympathy or any crying they did on Saturday, they made up for it on Sunday with happy tears.
Dave Sharapan, brilliant stuff. Let's end on this Justin Fields thing. One of our listeners, Unique, writes, Fields is just having a rough start to the season. Yeah, a 3 to 4 year rough start. It's been a 3 to 4 year rough start, but don't worry, it'll all change later. Teddy's so angry. I love it.
I'm not so angry. I think that if you blame Justin Fields for what's going on in Chicago,
not his fault.
I think Justin Fields absolutely has potential as an NFL starting quarterback. He's just mired in a very difficult spot.
Yeah, just like Chicago pizza has potential as pizza. Yeah. Okay.
It's not
Teddy
that they do it.
covers. Dave Sharapan. What a show. Dave, what do you got to promote?
I'll do it in 15 seconds. Every day, Bostonian versus the book, the @ symbol, Boston versus the book, Monday through Friday. We start about 11 o'clock Pacific, 2 o'clock Eastern. Then we do Sports Grid and Sirius XM Radio, 159 every day, 5 o'clock p.m., 8 o'clock Eastern. And then cash considerations has started back up with our own Dan Alexander and Tony Yanizzi. MLB Network, we're going to have a baseball playoff preview this week. I think I'm on Thursday and Friday, one or the other. That's it, boys. And Tuesday, Flex Tuesday, every single week right here until Prez tells me not to come. That's it.
We always want you. Dave Sharapan, everyone. Teddy, I am 3 hours away from my dentist appointment. I am in so much pain. It is ridiculous. I can't believe how painful the toothaches are. And the people who don't have dental and live in Uganda and just yank their teeth out, I feel for those people, man. Anyway, I'm taping the NFL presidential address in 1 hour. Brother, take us home.
I told you, you should have cast away that stuff. Tom Hanks can do it. You can do it. That'll solve your whole tooth problem with no issues moving forward. Not. That's going to wrap it for the Tuesday edition of WagerTalk Today. We'll do it again tomorrow. Same time, same channel. 9 a.m. here on the left coast, noon for you back east. Between now and then, you guys know what to do. Enjoy the games, and best of luck with all your wagers. Thanks for watching.